I love all the videos this time of year about people's favorite books. So I have been gathering and collecting my books so that I could share them all with you today. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you are new here. I am a mom to four. I love to homeschool. I love to read good books, and I love to share both of those things on this channel. And so if you also love those things, please consider subscribing. So I found it actually kind of hard to narrow down all my favorite books to a top 10 because I decided to do just 10 and I decided to rank them because I thought that would be fun. I'm going to start up high at number 10 and work my way down to number 1. Okay, coming in at number 10 is this book, which I don't own, but I loved, which was Lab Girl by Hope Jaron. And I read this sometime in the spring. It's about this woman and her journey from discovering a love of science through going to grad school, through becoming a professor and a research scientist and all of the things she studied. And she studied plants, as you can see by the cover, and I learned so much about plants. But she just added this just love of plants, and you could just feel it in the writing. I thought she was really funny, and I just laughed out loud so many times. For me, it could have been also because I shared that experience of graduate school with her. So some of the things she shared about being a graduate student, about all the late nights and ridiculous experiments and how nothing ever works, really resonated with me. So I just so enjoyed this book. Okay, number 9 was this book. So it's Magic Lessons by Alice Hoffman. I just finished reading this. It was one of my kind of atmospheric fall books. It's about a family, the Owens family, and this is the prequel book to Practical Magic, which is a movie, but it's also a series of books. This book is about witches, and this is the 1600s, so you're talking witch trials, and she was in Salem, Massachusetts, and it is just so good. I think what I liked the most about it is it's fast and slow, so there's always something happening. There's always kind of a big plot driver at every part of the book as she grows up. But there's enough rich detail and atmosphere and character development. I think that is what I really, really liked about her writing style. Was I just was drawn into it. I was just feeling all the feelings along with the main character, and it was just so well written, and it made me so excited to pick up the next 2 books. Next book, coming in at number 8, is The Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. I loved this book. When I first read the premise for this book, I wasn't sure how interesting it could be. The story circles around this man, an aristocrat in Russia in the early 1900s, if I believe, and he has been put under house arrest. So there's the big Russian Revolution that kind of switched powers, and so it took it from the royalty or the nobles into kind of more common people, if I remember my history right. But anyway, he was more a gentleman. He was a count, and then he did something that just kind of rubbed the new establishment the wrong way and ended up in house arrest. In other words, he couldn't leave this hotel for his entire life. If he did, he'd be shot, sort of idea. And so this book is him living in this hotel. And at first I was like, that can't be that interesting. And it's a fairly big book, but I loved it. I loved his character. I thought his character was so well developed. He definitely had flaws. He definitely grew throughout the book. You can see his character going from kind of this snotty aristocrat to a more thoughtful character, and just all the different people he meets and all the different lives that he touches and that touch his life as he is under house arrest. It's hard to describe because that description I might not pick up the book, but I just really enjoyed it. So I think that was number 8. Okay, number 7 is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Again, this is still the only book I have done a review, an official 1-book review of a book on my channel. And it was this one just because this book kind of made me think. It was very interesting and confusing. It's about this house in the middle of nowhere, and there's all these guests that have been invited for a party of sorts. And then the daughter, who's Evelyn, ends up being murdered. But the twist is the day restarts itself. And so how we view this story is through this main character. We're not really told if he's like an inspector or whatnot, but we're told the story through his eyes. But the key is his eyes keep changing. So he embodies a different character that is at the house on the day that she is murdered in order to figure out the mystery. And he has X amount of days to do it, if I remember right. And so he really lives in these people, and some of them are really smart, some of them are really deceitful, all manners of humanity there, and you learn different things every time. And then the timeline is also all messed up, so you're getting bits of information from different parts in the day, and you have to kind of keep it straight. So there's some criticism of this book because there's too long of a cast, there's too much time confusion, but I thought that was so fun. And I read it quickly, which probably helped out because I can see if I had picked this up and put this down, it might not have been as entertaining, but I loved it. I thought it was so good. So this is on my top favorites for the year, for sure. Next is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. I read this maybe in January or February, so early in the year, but it still kind of haunts me. It's one of those books that just tells a story so poignantly that you're really with them, and you're just appalled at so many things that happened. So what it's about is it's about this family. So this is told generationally, which again, I wasn't sure if I was going to like this, but basically what it does is it went back in time. So it covers probably about 300 years all in all. So it goes way back into the slave trade in Africa. So it starts with these African sisters, and they're split up. One marries a white slave trader, and one gets sold into slavery, captured and put onto a slave ship and sold. And then it kind of ends that generation, and it moves on to the next, their daughter or their son and what happened with them. So it's kind of telling the story in two different places. So one as it unfolds in America, in the South on plantations, and the other as they stay in Africa and the struggles there of the different tribes and different things going on there. So it is just so well written, and you get pulled in each time, even if you're with that character for only a short amount of time. It tells the story so beautifully. It is such a well-written book. So Homegoing. Next book on my favorites, coming in at number 5, is Becoming by Michelle Obama. So I've pretty much raved about this book since I read it a couple months ago. No, I read it around election, so it was October, I think I read this book. I loved it. I just loved her voice. I loved her story. I loved her realness. I love how it told the story kind of through her childhood. And I really looked up to how she talked about her mom and how her mom parented her and challenged her and loved her, and kind of that balance. And then it was so neat to kind of hear her story as she went to law school, tried to find herself, tried to follow her passions, and met Barack Obama and struggled a bit to have kids, but then was able to do that, and then became a mom, and then had to juggle all of that, and then the campaign, and then the White House, and all of these things. I just loved to hear her heart in this book, and to just hear that she's just a very strong woman with strong convictions, and she was able to really capitalize on that, just being First Lady, and it was just so beautifully written. And so I really like this, and I know this bugs some people, but I'm a huge fan. Okay, so these next 4 were really hard for me to rank, but I put at number 4 The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. And so this book was really one of those that brought me back into reading. So I have been reading a bit over the last couple of years, but nothing substantial. And this book reminded me about why I love reading. And it's so good. It's a World War II story following 2 sisters, 2 women who are very different. The older one has a family, a husband, a daughter, and she just really wants to live her life and serve her family. And her younger sister is more of a rebel. She wants to push back and be involved and fight the Nazis sort of idea. So the older sister, I think it's Vianne or something like that, her husband goes off to war, so it's just her and her daughter, and then the Nazis invade and the officers start living in the homes of the people in town. And so she got Nazi officers in her home. And just reading this, I just felt very in her shoes. It was very real to me, maybe because I'm a mom, and just trying to picture myself in that situation. How would that feel? What would that feel like? How could I take care of and love my children while staying strong for them? Well, I'm scared out of my mind because all of this is happening, and we can't eat, and we can't stay warm, and all of that stuff. And then also to have this just rebel sister who just wants trouble and is bringing trouble into the family, and just how hard that would be. Oh, This is so good. This made me cry so much. So I really, really liked this book. So good. Next is another World War II book. I kind of put these together because these two were hard to pull apart. My number 3 book is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Dewey, or however you say his name. I'm actually not sure. But this is a beautifully written book. This also takes place in France, and this follows 2 characters. It actually follows 2 children. So a girl who has gone blind at a young age, so like 6 or 8 or something like that, she's fleeing the city, fleeing Paris with her dad to the coast to live with her great uncle, and it follows her story all on there. And then there's also a boy who's a German boy who's an orphan, who lives in an orphanage, but he is very gifted and smart, and he is good with technology, so he could really fix anything. He knows, he just has a knack for it. And so he gets on the Hitler Youth kind of radar, and he gets taken into their program, and he becomes a Nazi. And you kind of follow his struggles with that, where he believes it and then becomes disenfranchised by the idea and kind of has to work through it. And then their stories start colliding when she and her family kind of rebel, or they join a bit of the rebellion and do some risky things. And that becomes known by some of the Nazis and things like that. So it's so good. Oh my gosh, so good. So I highly recommend this and that book for just tear your heart out sort of World War II books. Okay. What came in at number 2 for me this year is actually a trilogy, and I put them all together. If anybody has been watching my channel for a while, you won't be surprised. It's the Bear and the Nightingale trilogy. Oh my gosh, so the Bear and the Nightingale, The Girl in the Tower, as well as The Winter of the Witch. So good. And I still really love these UK covers. But this story is so good. I just love the character of Vasya. So the basic plot line is that there's this girl in kind of northern Russia, 1600s. So you're talking kind of the moving of Orthodox Christianity, but also the holding on to some native folklore of the region and intermixing that. So the story, though, is about this girl and this family. She has powers. She grows into her powers that were passed down from her mother. And there is this legend of a winter demon. What is he called? Frost demon. And you kind of meet that character. He becomes alive in this book. There's this man there. There's this priest who is very much against all that, is very scared of all that. And then there's this big bad thing that is after her. Oh, it's so hard to describe. I'm doing a bad job. But it is such a good book. Like, what I loved about this series is it just drew you in. It is a fantastical kind of historical fiction, which are kind of playing out to be some of my favorite books this year. But what I really like is it stays within our world. So it very much operates within 1600 Russia, but it has all these kind of magical, mystical things about it. And as her character grows and develops and she comes into her powers, it just is such a well-told story and very engaging. It held my attention all the way through. So that's number 2, is that whole series. And then my favorite book of the year. So number 1 is this one, As Bright as Heaven, which I have talked about. So this isn't really a surprise to anybody who's been watching my channel for a while. But I read this back in March or April, right around when the whole pandemic started. But I loved it. So this is a story about the 1919 Spanish flu. It's told through a family in Philadelphia. The dad works at a mortuary in the city, and then the flu hits, sort of idea. And you kind of feel it. There's some real intense flu descriptions in this book, and people are dying. It is really scary to be told it from the point of view of the family and to be worried about different family members, but also through the kind of the mortuary business, where it's like people, like bodies are piling up. There's no place to put them. They don't know what to do. This is much worse than they thought, sort of idea. So that was all very real and very touching. And that in and of itself would have made a good book. I'm super interested in microbial diseases and all of those things, especially in my fiction books. But what made this even better is that they ended up taking in an orphan, a flu orphan, and helping and raising this little boy and just finding joy and peace even amidst all the sorrow and all the hardship that had come from this time. And I just thought that was just really sweet, and it just tugged at all my heartstrings. And just to have this little boy be happy and to bring such happiness was just such a good story. So I really like this. I really, really, really recommend it if you haven't read it. If you're okay reading about a pandemic in a pandemic, which I know some people not so much, but I was all for it. So those are the books I have read and I have just loved this year. And I think I have had an outstanding year. Not all of these are new releases. There's a couple. Most of them are kind of old favorites. And as I was looking through my list, I realized about 3/4 of them are historical fiction. So that's not a big surprise for me. Those are just the books that really draw me in and make me feel it, and they're just more impactful. So yes, my favorites. I would love to hear some of yours. Top favorite, any of your favorites. If it's hard to narrow down, share a number of them, but please share your favorite books of the year. It is really fun to think about. It's fun to think back on it. And so I would love to hear what yours are. And so that is all I have for today's video. Please consider liking it, subscribing to the channel if you aren't already subscribed. And other than that, I will see you in the next book video, which is hopefully going to be my worst books. So stay tuned. All right. I will talk to you later. All right. Take care. Bye.